Let's talk about me. When I graduated high school, I knew I wanted to be a creative, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. As a teenager, I spent 3 years studying film and filmmaking techniques, and I always told myself that I wanted to be a movie director. But after I graduated high school, something in my bones told me that that was the wrong move. So when I went into college, I chose creative writing as my major. I was already quite practiced in creative writing as I had spent most of my childhood writing things in my diaries, whether it be poems, songs. I spent actually a lot of time writing screenplays, so I knew about basic narrative structures. So as I went into college, I felt that my creative writing major was a bit unnecessary, perhaps a stepping stone to a larger career, but not that big of a stepping stone. I don't know why I chose songwriting in particular. I think there's something exact about it compared to writing books or writing screenplays. I can get the clearest, sharpest ideas on paper without having to worry about production or big costs, because I knew in my heart, even though I didn't have any musical talent, I had the presentation skills, I had the expression, the expressiveness, and I had the ideas to create good art. When I was 18, I spent the fall of 2024 trying to figure out what my songwriting approach would be. Originally, I wanted to lean into my LGBTQ identity, but it became a crutch in the songwriting phase. Because I didn't actually have any inherent musicality, my writing on paper was lacking in brevity. It's true that I already had experience from writing songs in my diary back in high school, but it's not the same thing as putting it to music. My first project, which I soon abandoned, was called Sleeping Beauty. It was going to be a hyper-feminine, gender non-conforming EP where I basically role-played as a Disney princess who was also a little bit crazy and zany. I'll show you some of the lyrics that I wrote back at the time, but it didn't really feel uniquely me. I knew my art had to be LGBT inspired, but I didn't feel particularly drawn to the sort of gender expression that project warranted. And I also didn't have the vocals to pull off something that theater could. I abandoned that in like 2 or 3 weeks. There's this funny story I have. After I'd written that project, I knew I needed to learn how to sing, right? You can't make music if you can't sing. So my creative writing professor at the time, she had told the class that she was offering singing lessons. And so I came to her office and I asked her, hey, can I take part in some of those singing lessons that you're talking about? Turns out I totally misheard her. And when I came to her classroom, she looked at me like, and then when she explained that it wasn't singing lessons, I asked her, this kind of meeting's kind of superfluous now. And then I said, okay, well, do you want to kind of look over my writing and be an editor of sorts? And she was like, sure, I could look over your writing. And then I never sent it to her, and we didn't talk about it ever again. So, yeah. But anyway, I dropped that project because it didn't feel authentically me. And then I wrote a new project, a new 7-song EP that I didn't produce. It was going to be called Lorem Ipsum. It was going to be a Billie Eilish x Clairo cosplay. It was going to be really technological, real industrial, real melancholic. But I scrapped that because, I don't know, I didn't want, if I ever made it, I didn't want to be on a stage performing really sad songs because I'm not a very sad person. So I dropped that. I took about a month of reflection, and in October of 2024, I came up with a far greater concept that I did not manage to execute well, but in concept it was there. The EP was going to be called Rainbow Fairy Dreamland, and I wrote songs inspired by the rainbow. A little cliche, a little corny, but the songs were there. My writing chops were there. I wrote about queer experiences. I had this one song that I wrote that was called Out of the Closet Costume Party. And these queer people who don't want to come out of the closet because they're having an awesome costume party inside. And that was pretty fun to write. And I eventually got around to producing the songs myself. I bought a cheap $50 mic which I accidentally ruined and destroyed. I downloaded GarageBand and I started creating instrumentals. And I had no idea how to use a DAW. So my constructions ended up sounding quite lacking. I didn't know anything about EQ. I didn't know anything about instrument placement, but I still went for it. I recorded vocals even though I didn't know how to sing, and I made up for that with terrible auto-tune. And I had one central problem, even more problematic than the auto-tune itself. My audio was clipping the entire time, and I didn't think that was a problem. I didn't notice that it was unfixable until like spring of 2025. And by then I had already mixed and mastered it, which just meant obsessing over the tiniest details and vocal inflections and dragging notes so that they didn't sound. And so as I came about finalizing the project, I ended up writing 7 more songs. So I had a double rainbow concept, and there was going to be 14 songs. Get it? 7 colors of the rainbow, 2 rainbows means 14 colors. It was very clever. And then in the summer, I began doing a little bit of testing online, and I had no idea how to do that. I'm social, I'm charismatic, but I could not break TikTok to my will. And I was really upset about that. I barely had any followers. I would post once or twice, maybe 3 times a week. My videos were funny, manic, a bit unfocused though. And I'll show you some of those videos here.
We're not coming out of the closet until we're ready. We're having an awesome costume party. Feels so Katy Perry. Someone just told me that double rainbows are just light refraction. What the hell have I been living for?
Here you can see my awesome, cheap $5 costume that I wore, trying to have an aesthetic that would stand out on TikTok. It was full bohemian, hippie rainbow guy, and it was trash. My mom had actually bought me that costume 2 years ago for Halloween, and I was going to be a hippie. But the costume didn't fit because I was much fatter then. And eventually it did fit when I got around to posting content for Rainbow Fairy Dreamland. But it didn't help that I didn't like wearing undershirts. Here, you can watch some right here. Here's another one that I made.
How could she break up with me and leave me for another celebrity? Oh, and a homecoming too. Cardboard cutout of Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah, I got some crazy comments on that one. So why did Rainbow Fairy Dreamland fail? Well, firstly, I didn't know a damn thing about social media. I still don't really know that much about it. Secondly, the music was not very good. I had the concepts, I had the melodies, I didn't have the voice or the production skill, so it sounded extremely amateur and poorly made. So my dreams were not met. And to make things worse, I had a serious mental health crisis in that summer, the summer of 2025. And there were a lot of things going on in my household I won't get into, but they impeded my creative process. And I'll just say that social media does not allow space for trauma. If I really wanted this to succeed, I would have to be smarter about it. And it didn't help that I had released the whole album at once with no followers, no singles. I thought that it wouldn't make that much of a difference because I didn't have any followers to begin with, so what does it matter if I release a whole album into the ether? That album failed, and that's not to say if I kept going at it, it wouldn't have succeeded. I think there was a chance that I could have gotten something from it if I had smartened up my strategies, but it was too much from someone who had too few resources. So here I am now. This is my new outfit. Originally, my artist name was going to be Aura V Cruz. I've since removed the V, and I'm restarting. So it was foolish of me to think that I could blow up in 3 months with songs that were horribly mangled. I've removed all those songs from streaming. I still have them as a backup in case I ever want to use them again. But that's not something that's going to go out anytime soon. After my mental health breakdown, I decided to try again. And this time, I was going to go one song at a time. I decided to base my new song off of an experience that I had in Orlando while I was at college. I lived on the 6th floor of my dormitory, and it was incredibly lonely up there. I was still struggling with mental health problems, and every night I would watch the sun set and feel a deep emptiness inside of me. So that's what Funky City is about. The song is a dance pop song, right? But lyrically, it's about glamorizing loneliness. And that song kind of popped up spontaneously because I didn't write a whole project to go with it. It is a one-off single. I don't even have a following to speak for it, but it seems like an intelligent pivot, especially because my previous attempts were a bit underwhelming. So here I am with my new outfit that I bought from Amazon and these cool retro sunglasses that I accidentally smeared lipstick on and don't know how to wash off. And I'm sitting here making bootleg content and dropping out of college. So I'm optimistic that this will work out. Anyway, bye.